Hey everyone, thanks for clicking on this video. Been wanting to make this one for a while, but I finally had the time, so I decided I would go ahead and sit down and make it. So, velocity banking, totally a scam. I really hope you've not seen these videos on velocity banking and you've gotten lured into doing that already. If you have seen them and you're thinking about doing that, I hope you watch this video and learn how it is 100% not going to help you pay off your loans faster. It's going to take longer and it's going to cost you more money. Why would you want to do that? It surprises me that it even sort of lured me in. I didn't do it, thankfully, but it sounded like it was a great idea. Oh, pay your loans off faster. Oh, use more banking products to pay off the other banking products you have already. Well, if that makes sense to you, I certainly hope you watch this video, learn how that doesn't work. Be very careful who you listen to. I'm going to be teaching you, if you follow through, I'm going to be teaching you how to use things like Excel or Google Sheets to do these number crunching yourself and be able to determine what the actual outcome is going to be. So be very careful who you listen to with anything, but especially bankers. All right. Now, I do have a degree in finance. I was a stockbroker for a little amount of time. I'm not anymore because I got another degree in mechatronics engineering, and that's actually what I work in now. That's another reason why I wanted to teach people how to use Excel, because there's just so many things that you can do with Excel, but especially just finances, and they don't really teach you that in high school. So follow along. You're going to learn a lot. You're going to learn to be very skeptical of anything a banker is going to tell you, or any banker masquerading as somebody trying to help you on YouTube, which again is not me. I'm an engineer now, not a banker. But follow along. Be skeptical of a banker. Be skeptical of anyone trying to tell you that you can save money by using more banking products. But we're going to switch over here to the computer, and I'm going to start you from very fresh beginning, just opening an Excel sheet and how to do this whole thing yourself. So you're gonna be able to see that. So stick along, and I hope you learned something. Okay, so now that we've switched over to the computer, I can have a better view of what I'm doing here. I do recommend this be watched on a computer if you're actually trying to learn how to do the Excel formulas and functions and everything and build that. If you're just on a phone, this still to be good information, but for practicing, I would definitely recommend being on a computer for this. Okay, so let's get started. You've just installed Excel, and you could also use Google's Sheets if you have that. I know that's free compared to having to have subscription to Microsoft Office. Should work exactly the same. I believe all of the formulas and functions are the same, and they do that just to make it easy. So use either one, whichever you have. I prefer Excel far more, but if you don't have that, you can still follow along in Google Sheets. So you have it installed, you open a new file. This is what you see. You just see a whole bunch of cells. These cells are tiny little calculators, every single one of these. And there's tons. You can make more. It just goes on forever. There's, I think, hundreds of thousands of cells that you can have, if not more. They can all be doing their own mathematical calculations. And what we're going to do today is build an amortization schedule so you can know what you're to expect when you're either getting a loan of any kind, but more specifically a mortgage. How's the interest calculated? How is the equity calculated? And it's really good information to know how to do that. You don't need to be a banker to need to know how to do that. If anybody's buying anything large and they're taking a loan out, you should really know how banks come up with these numbers. So that way you can stop them from doing something they shouldn't have. Maybe they made a mistake, an honest mistake, maybe not. Maybe they're trying to steal money from you. I don't know. I'm not saying anything about bankers. I'm just saying it's good to know how to do these things yourself. And that's what I did on this velocity banking thing. I realized something's not adding up here. There must be a reason why not to do this, because they're really trying to sell it to you. It's these bankers. You may not know they're bankers on YouTube, but if they're trying to get you to use business bank products, they're a banker at some level. And that's what I've seen a lot of. They're just like, oh, you're poor because the bank's not told you about all these options they have. And it's like, yeah, they probably didn't tell you about that option in the bank because it wouldn't actually help you, or it would help them more than it helps you. So just be careful what you listen to, and all the clickbait and different types of things like that. It even got me, I'll be honest. I started looking into it and I was like, oh, that's really interesting. And then I realized. So I want to share that with other people. So let's get started. When you have an amortization schedule, you have a few things that you need to know. That's going to be your purchase price of your house, your amount of down payment, your interest rate, different things like that. And I'll go ahead and show you what we're going to be building, and then we'll go through each step of building it. So I have this sheet down here called Being Smart, because this is the smarter way to do things. Then we have one with velocity banking. So we'll go over these things. I know there's a lot of numbers here now. There's colors and everything. So we'll be going through every single step. But these are the things you need to know to start off with. These are your so-called assumptions. You're going to maybe assume we're going to have a purchase price of $150,000 and a down payment of, that's 10%, $15,000. So our total loan amount, the amount that we're taking from the bank, is $135,000, so on and so forth. So let's go ahead and just copy these names here real quick. Just paste those over. Let's keep it on the same thing there. So I just did Control-C after selecting those things. You can paste it into whichever cell you want to. So you can click there, you can paste it there, wherever you want to. So each one of these cells is going to be unique in that this one only has this information. It's not really that important for text, but you do want to separate all these so that they have their own placeholder. And we're going to tabulate things. So we're going to either be tabulating in a row, which is, this is a row, or tabulating things in a column. So all the way down here. And this makes calculation of a bunch of numbers really fast. As you can see here, we've got 360 different rows in these columns because of a typical 30-year mortgage on a house. Paying monthly, you'll be making 360 payments. So that's a lot of calculations. We don't want to do those all by hand. So I'm going to show you how to do that really easily. So we're going to fill in this information. Obviously, your purchase price can be whatever you want it to be. If it's larger or smaller, then you make that change on your side. The interest rate hopefully is going to be a little bit lower in the future here once I actually post this video, and once you're actually trying to make a decision on buying a house. Hopefully, we'll see. Although when interest rates fall, house prices increase, if you don't know that. But keep an eye out for that. So I'm just going to go with these are the actual details of the video that I watched. And I don't want to be rude. I'm not going to tell you the name of the person's video who I watched who really sort of got under my skin for how she's really oversells this velocity banking thing. But you might be able to figure it out. But again, I'm not gonna say that. So we're going to go with 150,000. Now that's a hard number. That number's not going to change. So we can just literally type it into the cell there. All right, so 150,000. It's kind of hard to read. There's no commas there. That's because it's just in a general format. Let's go ahead and change that to a counting number format. It's going to give us a comma. It's going to give us the pennies at the end there. We give us the little number sign there. That'll help us just remember that when we immediately look at that number, we know it's money. So the down payment, we're just going to assume a 10%. So what we can do is we can hit equals. We select that cell right underneath it where we want to calculate the down payment. We just click equals. Now, when you do equals as the first character in a cell, it's going to assume you're wanting to do a formula. So if you type a bunch of weird stuff and, okay, well, if you type things that don't make sense, it's going to give you an error, a name error. There's plenty of different errors. But we're going to calculate 10% of this 150,000. So what we can either do is, it's waiting for us to do an input. You can see the little line there blinking. And then we can either click on this cell, or if we wanted to just hit up on the arrow keys, we can do that. We can actually literally just type in B2 and it's going to know what we're talking about because we're on the B column. We're on the second ring. So we want to calculate 10% of that. So what we do is we do the star for multiplication and then 0.1, because 0.1 is going to be equivalent to 10%. So voila, that gave us 15,000. Now that was pretty easy to do in your head, but if it was some weird, crazy number like your interest is going to be, it's going to be a little bit more difficult to do that in your head. So this is one of the things that makes Excel so great. So loan amount is obviously the purchase price minus your down payment. So we do it equals again. We go up to the total purchase price of the house
the minus sign to subtract out what you've paid, because you're not taking a loan out on your down payment, obviously. But I know this may be slow for some people, but stick with me to the end so you can learn exactly what the difference is between velocity banking and being smart. Or you can just click through the video to get to the end to spoil the surprise there. But so interest rate, now that's going to be something completely random. I can't guess what your interest rate's going to be. It depends on your credit worthiness. It's going to depend on the market. But for here, I just chose 8% because mortgages were around 8% a few months ago. So we're going to just type in 0.08. And then we can just leave it like that, or we can actually throw it into a percent form here, however you want to look at it. You can click on this to go to different types. I'm just going to keep it in percent form so we can just quickly look at it and we know what it's talking about. So monthly interest rate, that is going to be what you're paying per month. So that's going to be your interest rate per month. So all you have to do is do an equals, go up to that interest rate, and then divide that by 12, because the 8% is the interest rate per year. For easier calculation, we're going to get the monthly interest rate because that's going to help us calculate your monthly payment. It's not necessarily as important to know what you'll be paying over the year. You want to know each and every month, how much of my income is this going to take to do? That's just more easy numbers for our brains to work with. So long term is going to be 30 years. You could have a 25-year, you could have a 20, a 15-year. I'm sure there's many others out there, especially depending on what type of loan you're taking out. But because I'm going off the assumption that this is a house mortgage and we're talking about the standard person who usually takes out a 30-year, we're going to do just a 30-year loan term. Payments per year should be pretty obvious. That's 12. We're doing monthly payments. It's 12 months in the year. So these total cost of finance and total spent on interest, those will come later after we do more calculation over here. We're just going to sum all those things over here so we can quickly look how much did this cost of finance, how much did we spend on interest. This income, expenses, and cash flow, this is going to be based on you. If you want to do your own information, do that. If you want to stick with these assumptions that I've made, you can do that as well. It should be, if you want to follow me along with these exact numbers, it might help you to realize one of your formulas is off if you're not seeing the same numbers in some places. So I'm just going to go back over here. Okay, so I'm just going to copy those. This one is a formula there. So just copy those two hard-coded numbers. Hard-coded is just when a formula is not deriving that number. We just typed that in. That can't change unless we go in and change it. That's hard-coded. This one, when we make a formula over it, is not hard-coded. So we're going to take the income. We're going to take actually plus the expenses, because if you can see those parentheses around the 4,100, that actually means it is a negative number. So if we add a positive and a negative number, then that positive number is going to be smaller. So this line of credit monthly interest rate won't matter for this first one we're doing. We're just going to do a basic amortization schedule, which doesn't have anything to do with the line of credit. And velocity banking is really just taking out a line of credit in order to help you more quickly, they say, pay off your mortgage loan, which we'll see later that it actually does not help you pay it off faster. But we will just say, what did I do over here? That's monthly. So I did 14%. If you come up here and look in this formula, you can see equals 14% divided by 12. So again, we're doing the monthly, but the yearly was 14. So we'll just do that same formula over here. We're going to do equals 0.14 times, or sorry, not times, divided by 12. So that's the percentage we're paying monthly on that line of credit. So we're paying 1% here. If you look up here, that's a much smaller percent. Well, it goes to 1 if you don't have zeros. So if you do like I just did there, and it shows 1%, that's actually not 1%. It's just rounding up because you're only giving it no leading zeros, or you're not moving the decimal over. So if you go over here, click this decimal, it'll start giving you more decimal points. Again, when you go that far, you see it rounds it up from 0.6 to 0.7, and rounds it up to 1 because that's the closest thing I can go to. But obviously it's not 1. This one's not exactly 1 either. So your monthly interest rate for the mortgage is 0.66, repeating. This is almost double. And you could also just look at the interest rate. The 8 to 14, it's not quite double, but it's close. And these are just, again, random numbers. You'll have to go to a bank to figure out what your interest rate's going to be. But this gives us a nice place to jump off from. So, where do we go from here? Well, there's a few helpful formulas that are going to help us determine what a monthly payment would be on a loan of this size with this interest rate, with this payments per year. And what that is PMT. PMT is just short for payment, and that's a built-in function of Excel to quickly and easily figure out what you're going to be paying. So I'm going to look at this one just to figure out where I did it. I did it on H. That gives us just some nice padding here, so the numbers are a little bit separated, so it helps your eye. So I did that in H. Let's do it in H over here, and I did it on the third ref. So H3. Okay, so let's just type the equals again. So this is a formula slash function built in, but we still need the equals. If you don't do equals, it's just going to take whatever you give it and just leave it as that, because it's just text. It's just a string of letters and numbers and other characters. But if we do an equals, it's going to do a formula for us. So we're going to type in PMT. It does not have to be capital, even though all these are. You can either click on it, or you can just literally put the parentheses at enter. And so it's going to tell you down here what you need to give it. And if you don't know what these are, like in per, like maybe you're not familiar with what that is, you can click on what they are. I believe you can click on it. If not, you can just hit F1, and that will pull up the help. And it's going to, because you're in that cell with PMT, it's going to assume you're wanting help on the payment function. It's going to give you a little bit of a description over here on what those things are. But we'll just go back over here. So the rate, we already calculated that. Now, for the payment, you're making a monthly payment. So which month interest rate are you going to use? The yearly or the monthly? Well, you could figure out the yearly payment and you would use the yearly interest rate, but we're doing this on a monthly basis. So we're going to choose the monthly interest rate. Right, and you can see here there's a comma right after the rate. So it's expecting a comma. And then now you'll see that the in per is now bold text. That's what you're currently on. That's what it's wanting you to give it. The in per is the number of periods of the entire loan. So this is a 30-year loan with 12 payments. So what we're going to do is we're going to select the 30 just by clicking on that cell. We're going to multiply that by 12 by doing the star and then click the 12. And then that will give us 360. That's the number of payments, the number of periods for this loan. So we just do another column, and now it's asking for PV. That's the present value of the loan. And until you originate the loan and start paying on it, the present value is what the loan amount is going to be. So we're just going to select that 150,000 there. Future value is what FV stands for. We don't need that, and we also don't need type. Future value would be, let's say you didn't want the future value of your loan amount to be zero. In other words, you'd still owe the bank some money at the end of this. You would put a future value of, say, $10,000. If you did that, then you wouldn't own the full house. You'd still be negative $10,000 on the equity. That doesn't really matter. We're just not going to enter that. The type is whether or not you're going to be paying at the beginning of the month or the end of the month, which is going to change your interest a little bit. But the default, if you don't put any of these in, if you just literally close it like that, then the default is going to be 0 for both of those. So you don't actually have to enter those, but they are options if your bank for whatever reason requires payment at the beginning of the month as opposed to the end of the month, and so on. So you just hit enter and it automatically calculates it. So it's $990.58. That is your first month's payment. So I'm going to put 1 here, so that's the first payment. And then what I'm going to do is I'm going to go ahead and start building the table, the amortization table that we'll have for this. So that's the first month. We're just going to label this column the month. This one will be labeled the payment. So we're going to go 2, 3, and something that's cool with Excel is you don't have to literally go type each and individual one out. You select these 3. You could even just do selecting 2. Select these 2, then you hover over this lower right-hand corner. You see how the plus sign goes from white to black there. If you do that, it's going to allow you to drag this, and it's going to make some assumptions as to what it is you're wanting to drag down. So there's a 1 and a 2. Well, essentially that's a sequence of numbers with only one number between them. So you're just counting up by 1. So it's going to assume that that's what you want to continue doing, and then you can just drag down for as far as you want. And this number a little bit up and to the right is what number you're going to end on. So if I end here, it's going to end on 37. But we ought to go to 360. So just click that again on that bottom right-hand corner, and then we're just going to drag down until we see 360. Be careful how far you pull down, because this is going to count up pretty darn quick, and you don't want to blow past it. So about right there. 360. So we can scroll back up to the top. And what I'm also going to do is I'm going to put a year out cheaper. And what we're going to do is we're going to do it equals, and then put month, and then divide it by 12. So now we know how many years we're into it. Well, that's a weird number, obviously. We can remove some of those zeros. And then something else that's cool about Excel and very time saving is we already have this super long line of the amount of rows that we want of data. So what we can do is, if this is right next to that, we can go here, and instead of clicking and dragging, we can just double click, and it's going to automatically copy and paste that formula all the way down. So something else that I've not got into yet is cell referencing. So we went in here, we did the equals, and we said this month. Well, I could have said this one over here, or this one over here, whatever. And because it's just a plain G3, there's no altering to this G3. It's just going to copy down with the formula. So this one here, it follows it down. What you can do, and we'll do here in a little bit, is we can lock that reference. So say I wanted to lock the row. So I didn't want this thing to move in rows, but it could move in columns. I could put a $sign in front of the 3. That didn't change anything because I only changed that with this one. But if I copy this down again, then every one I go to here, that 3 didn't change because I told it, hey, don't move. Lock that reference. We obviously don't want that. We want it to be like this. So if I did, go ahead and copy that down to all the zones. If I did the G, and then copy this down, no, it didn't change anything. Exactly, because it's locking the G, not the row. It's locking the column. So if I were to copy this way, it's going to lock the G. It's not going to slide to the left or right because we locked the column. But for now, I'm just going to undo that. You don't need it. Copy that down again. So let's go ahead and do that with this one also. However, we need to lock some of these in, because if I copy this down, it's going to have a whole bunch of errors. So we click into this. We want to lock all of these because we don't want them changing. These numbers don't move anywhere on the table. They stay here. They're hard-coded and locked right there. We don't want these sliding around when I click and drag this, copy that formula down. So all of those need to be locked. And a quick way to lock them is just being in front of or next to one of the letters or numbers and just clicking F4. And it will automatically add both reference locks for the column and the row. Now, if you click F4 again, it'll just be locking the row. Click it again, it'll just be blocking the column. Click it again, it'll be locking nothing. So for this, we just want to lock the row and the column. So we're just going to hit F4 once on all of those, click enter, and ta-da. Now we can double click on that, and it stretches that down. Now, in a typical mortgage or a loan, your loan payment shouldn't ever change throughout the entirety of the loan. So we go all the way down, it's the same all the time, which is good because hopefully the dollars in 30 years from now will be worth less than they are now. So that's the one good thing. that's really only possible with a fixed rate mortgage, which I would probably recommend that over any. You definitely want a fixed rate mortgage as opposed to floating, just because your interest rate could go up. If the interest rate goes down, well, you might need to refinance so you can get a better deal. You also want a loan that you have no prepayment penalty on, especially when regarding either the velocity banking or just being smart and paying more toward your loan. You don't want any penalty for paying more than you're supposed to owe each month. That's how you get out of debt faster, is by paying more than you really owe. So now that we have that, let's go ahead and look back over here. Okay, so we're going to calculate the interest that you pay each month and the equity that you pay each month. And as you can see here, starts pretty high over here and then starts to slowly go down over time. Over here, the equity starts low, but again, increases over time. And then we're going to add in some of these other ones. And then we're just going to calculate the total accrued equity that you have so far, and then the principal remaining on the loan that you owe. So we can do that again with some quick and easy formulas. So, forgot which one that is. That's just IPMT. So that's interest payment. I mean, it should be pretty easy to remember, but there's so many you can pretty easily forget them. All right, so we're just going to put in the same information that we did on the payment, and it's just going to spit out something different. So again, the rate was this, and again, remember we need to lock that, so let's click F4 while we're here, then click a comma, and then the period, so that's going to be different. So because the interest is going to change throughout the life of the loan, we have to tell it which period we're currently in, and that would be the month. So we're just going to click that. We're not going to lock that one. We could technically lock the column because we don't want it moving over here, but we do want the row to change. But I'm just going to leave it as is because we're not going to be stretching this formula out this way. Comma. So in per, the number of periods, again, that is just going to be 30 times 12. Then we're going to lock both of those. So F7, click back, F7. F4, comma, and then present value of the loan. So on the first one, so we did with the payment, the first present value of the loan is going to be that. We're going to click F4 again. We don't need FE or type. We're going to click interest. So $900 exactly. Is that what it was over here? No, it was not. Why is that different? Okay, so I realized this wasn't actually an 8% interest on this one. It just rounded up to 8%. That's what I took it as. It's really 7.75. So I should have clicked in there to realize what that was. So let's just go change that over here. 7.75. Okay, now I have the exact same numbers. So we calculated this, and we can just drag it down. And this month is going to drag down with it, which will calculate each unique month's interest payment. So as you can see, it is very slowly going down. So it is not going, I mean, after 4 years, you're only less than $40, paying $40 less on your interest than your equity. That's the problem with a 30-year loan. They're not great. I would recommend doing like a 15-year if you can afford it. If not, well, then do the 30 and pay as much as you can down toward it. And we'll get to those points later on. But so now we can do another formula to do equity that's built in, or we can literally just take the payment minus the interest. Well, because these are negative, really you would want to do the smaller number minus the bigger number to get the positive difference between them. So again, that formula is just taking the interest minus the payment. So it gives you a positive $95. That is what your equity is in the house. So after 1 month, one payment, you own $95 worth of the house. Not very large. Again, because we made a formula. Just click on it, click down, and it's going to calculate. So what we can do now is we can start summing some of these things. So we scroll down all the way to the bottom. And then we can sum all of these numbers above it together. We can do that really simply by just going over here and clicking on auto sum. And then it's going to make an assumption of what you want to sum. So sometimes you may need to go all the way up, make sure it's not including anything it shouldn't be. And it did pretty well. So that was exactly what we wanted to sum. So we want to sum all those things. Click enter, and voila, that adds up to 135. That's exactly what the loan amount is. So that's how that works. You're slowly paying up to that 135,000. Now, this is the interest one. What do you think this adds up to? Probably a pretty big number. Click sum. Ta-da! $213,000. So, for a 30-year loan for a $150,000 house, you spent $213,000 solely on interest. That money goes to the bank. Out of your income, out of your hard work, your sweat and tears, that goes to the bank. This is why we want to pay down loans faster. And this is why people latch on to people wanting to get out of debt, and they sell them another product called velocity banking or a line of credit and these ideas. And people that don't do this kind of work don't realize it's really not going to be saving you any money, or it's going to give you more headaches. It's going to make your life harder. It's going to give you more risk. And I'll get into that later when we're doing the line of credit video. But again, if we were to just auto sum the entire payments, this will be everything you've paid, including the interest. So auto sum that. Ta-da, you've paid $348,000 for a $150,000 house. But if you can't pay cash, then this is better than nothing, right? So what we can do is we can just scroll up here and we can put in these numbers here. So we can either do the auto sum here, which you can literally just type sum, open parenthesis, and then select which numbers you want to sum, in parenthesis, and then boom, it'll sum those numbers. Or we can just go reference the calculation that we did down at the bottom. So I'm just going to do that. I'm going to click A equals and just go to the bottom. Ta-da. And so that's the total cost of finance. That's what you earned in equity, and that's what you spent on interest. The total spent on interest, we're going to just go down, click this one down here. Of course, I'm going to pass it again. Oh, way past it. There we go. So now we can just have those numbers at a quick glance up top here. Just makes things a little bit easier. You don't have to do that. So, equity. Now let's do total accrued equity. So this will be total accrued equity thus far. So at this month, obviously you have this here. So we're just going to do equals and then that. So this next one, we have to say, okay, we have this in our total equity account. Let's say it's an account. And you want to add that number to it. Well, that's all you do. You go to the cell below it. This is the second month. This will be after you make the mortgage payment. You add this number plus this number. That gives you your total accrued equity this far. Then all you have to do, that formula is going to stay the same all the way down. So then we can just double click that. And so at 3 years, you've earned $3,847 in equity. And if you're interested in taking out a home equity line of credit, a HELOC, that would essentially be the maximum you could take out. There's going to be fees to that, so you're actually not going to end up with that amount. So if you have some troubles and you need to take out some money of your equity in your house, you would do a HELOC, and this is the total amount. Actually, less than that. That would be the total that you could take out in that HELOC. And they're probably never going to let you take out 100% of your current equity. So it's going to be even lower than that. And fees. Yeah, all that. So you can just follow that all the way down. And at the end, it's going to equal what the house is, or what the loan is worth, $135,000. Then we also, just for keeping track of things, we can do total remaining principal. Let's use the bank words. Total remaining principal. Because this was the principal at the beginning. So all we need to do now is loan amount minus what you technically paid into it. Actually, no, let's do not the total. Agree. We're going to do the equity. So each month, you're taking what the principal value of the current principal value of the loan and subtracting the equity you put into it. All this goes to the bank. That almost $900 goes to the bank. This is the amount that you're taking away from the remaining amount of loan that you have out. So it goes down very slowly because your equity is so small. This is how banks protect themselves, because they're giving you a whole chunk of money. They're giving you $135,000, which can't buy any house with $135,000 anymore, but they're giving you a huge chunk of money because you don't have that money. You have $15,000 that you can put into this. They're giving you a whole bunch of money, and that's risky for them. So they need to accrue some money heavily in the first part, because if you default after 10 years, well, they've lost money. They have a bunch of work that they have to go do. So they're still in it for $113,000. So they need to get paid back quickly, because they're doing you a favor. I mean, if banks didn't exist, what would we do? We'd be building the house very slowly over time, brick by brick. Thankfully, we don't have to do that, but I can't paying $213,000 in interest. It may not be worth that. So again, we can't just copy this one down, because this loan amount is going to be changing throughout the life of this loan. So what we do is we do an equals, and we do this. This is the principal remaining outstanding on our loan minus the payment we just made to it, the equity. So we click equals. So it's going to continually go down. And now this will stay the same. This formula will stay the same. So we can click that one and go down. And as you'll see, this will be 0 at the end of the loan, obviously, because you won't owe any more money on it. So that's all well and good. That is an amortization table. That wasn't so hard, was it? The hard part is really making it to the end and realizing you just spent more than your house is worth to own it. Now, granted, after 30 years, hopefully that $150,000 house would be worth maybe $350, $400, depending on the market. Obviously, it's all going to depend on the market and the economy. But after 30 years, hopefully you would have at least doubled your worth. So how do we get that number, that total spent on interest number, down? Well, if you have a loan, again with a fixed rate, and one that doesn't penalize you for paying more each month than they're demanding of you, so they're demanding is $967. Well, what if you are flush with cash? Let's say your income is $5,200. Your expenses each month is $4,100. You have $1,100 left over. Let's say you don't need that $1,100 each month, and you can spend it on whatever you want. You can go out to eat, you can buy a new car, you can, whatever you want to do, you can spend that money however you want. What if you just put it toward the loan and paid it down that much faster? Is that allowed? Again, yeah, it would be with a prepayment. A loan that does not have a prepayment penalty can pay as much down as you want. If you win the lottery, you could go pay it off the next month here, and then you'd be done. You would have only paid interest of $800, almost $900. It's probably not going to happen, so let's not plan on that. So let's alter this to show that we are using that $1,100 toward the loan each month. So what you can do is, say you built this table and you're like, oh, that's all well and good, but you are like, hey, I want to add a column here. Well, you can select that K. That's going to take everything to the end of this Excel document, which, I mean, if you just keep scrolling, it can be like 100,000 or more rows. So we just click the K, and then we click insert, and it will automatically default to inserting to the left. You can do the same thing with rows. It's going to automatically insert above. But say you don't want to do it above, you can do insert sheet rows. Well, it should give you the option to do below. Well, whatever. So now we have this row here, and we're just going to say additional payment to equity. Because whenever you pay more than this payment, let's say you paid $968.16, that extra $1 is going toward your equity, not the interest. You're not owing any more interest other than what's right here. So anything over this amount is going to go to your equity. So let's just take that full amount of $1,100 and let's code it to this actual cell. So we'll do an equals, we'll click on that. And then because this cell is not changing, that $1,100 not changing, hopefully it's going up, if anything, throughout time. But we're just going to cell reference lock that with an F4. And then we're just going to drag that down. So we have to alter some of these formulas that we have here to reflect this additional payment. So what we're going to do is we're going to click in this total accrued equity. And we're just going to add in that right there. And when we do that, you saw everything change. That really only changed this cell. If we want this $1,100 to be added to every monthly payment, we need to, again, click and drag that down. So now it will be reflecting that all the way down. So that didn't change anything over here. We've only subtracted out of this principal this equity payment. So we need to subtract out also this larger payment here. And again, you'll see all of those change and update. But again, you're not seeing this in this formula. So click minus that to subtract that out of there. And then again, it's not here, but this is the formula that we need to copy down. So we can just remember when your cursor turns to that black plus sign, click and voila. Now I can scroll down and decide, hey, when is this 0? Well, this doesn't actually go to 0. It goes negative, which is fine. We want it to be negative. So essentially, if this is negative, that means you've paid off your loan. So if you've gotten to this point, you can just drag over here, and at 110 months or 9 years and 2 months, you are done with this loan. You have paid it off and you don't owe any more interest or anything else. So that took 30 years down to just over 9 years. That is crazy. But because we still need to edit our Excel table to really show that, we're still going to be showing these huge numbers in interest paid and total paid on the house. So what we need to do is just modify this a little bit. So if we go to this one here, this is the first one where it's negative. And we show, and we go into this formula, we can do something called a conditional statement. Now this is getting pretty deep into Excel formulas and even basic coding. So it's good to know how to do these things. It's not always necessary. And you don't technically need to do this unless you just really wanted that sum down there. And you really could just do a sum equals sum here, and then anything below this, we don't, so we just click there and go. Now we could do that to do this. But what I'm showing you is a little bit more easy and more modifiable way of doing things, more modular, so that you can plug and chug a bunch of different numbers of your interest rate and your total loan, and it will reflect it all throughout with you. If you did this equals sum and then you clicked here and it went up and this, and then did everything, and then you changed any of these numbers up here, this formula you just put down here is not going to be accurate anymore. So we're making it modular. So we go into here, we're going to add an if statement. So we're saying if, and then in parentheses, we're going to test some logic, a logical test here of something. So if it's this, then do this. Or do this if it's not that original thing. That may sound confusing. Let me explain it here. So what I'm going to say is, if this number over here is less than 0, then we want this number to be 0 because we're not paying any more payments, right? If the loan is done, we're not paying any payments. So if this number, and that's one row above, we're not talking about the current month, we're talking about the month before. If the month before it is 0 or lower, if it's less, if M111 is less than 0, then we want this number over here to also be 0. So we're just going to put 0 and then put another. And so what we just put in, if the value of that is true, then do 0. If the value is false, if the value of this is still greater than 0, then we still have payments on it, then go ahead and do that original payment formula we did. As you can see here, voila, that one it's referencing here is technically above 0. So we need to have another payment. Now, obviously, you wouldn't still be paying almost $1,000, pay off $93. So what we can do is we could, I'm not going to do it right now, we could add even more if statements in here to say, well, if this number is less than what this number is, then do that number. But I'm not going to get that far into it. That doesn't really matter that much. We're not going to nitpick all that much. So we're just going to leave that as is. And then now, as you can see this little green triangle up in this corner here, that's showing you, that's saying like, hey, you got a bunch of formulas here, and that one's different. It's just drawing your eye. So if you click on it, it'll literally tell you formula cell differs from the formulas in this area of the spreadsheet. What we want to do is copy that down. And you'll notice that that changed to 0. Because if we click on that cell, we want to look at why it's 0. Well, it's referencing this number, and that one, like we were saying, is now below 0. It's negative. You can know that by the parentheses over here. Sometimes Excel does red numbers with parentheses as negative numbers. Sometimes it's black with parentheses, and that just depends on what type of number it's using. So if you do accounting, it's going to be black. If you do currency, then it should be, oh, well, no, never mind. I'm not going to get too much into that. But just know, sometimes it's not always red. If there's parentheses around it, that does mean that it is a negative number. So that was for the payments. That's going to alter our total payments column. We want to do the same exact thing to this column. So we're going to go in, we're going to click right before the iPayment thing and do if. And the logical test is going to be if that same thing, the row above that is less than 0, then 0, because we're not paying any interest to that. And if it's false, if that number is greater than 0, then we still need to figure out what the interest payment is going to be. So, ta-da, that one is all zeros. Now, we added that extra if to these numbers below where it actually changes. What about the ones above? Well, again, if we change some of those numbers up top, this may not, that formula change we did may not have an effect on it. So what you can do is, you can't go up with a formula automatically by just clicking on something, but you can go ahead and just click that, again, click that black, the corner where your plus sign is black, click and just drag it up, and just drag it up all the way to the top. And then ta-da. So now you can see that if statement is in even this one way up here. Now we want to do that for this one too. So just click and drag. So now if we change some other numbers up here, the place where these go to 0 will change with the numbers and how they change. So if we go look down here, this is after adding in that $1,100 every month. Now our total paid That can't be right. So our total actual payments to the loan from the payments made is 106. That's less than the 135. That's because that's not calculating, not incorporating this $1,100 extra payment. So again, we can go up here to this one. So if we're already done paying the loan, we don't want to keep paying extra payments to this. There's nothing to pay to because the loan's gone now. So again, we're going to do another if statement. If this number is less than 0, then do 0. Otherwise, do that number there. In parentheses. So now it just goes to dash sign. And to get this one to stop being these crazy large negative numbers, what we can do is if the number above it is less than the payment being made that month, then we want this to be because we're doing everything based off of it's less than 0. We didn't do less than or equal to 0. Let's do -1. Or do the original statement. And doing these kind of more involved if statements can really quickly get you into a circular reference error. So I do recommend being careful with those because if you're referencing something that depends on what you're changing, then you'll get a certain... Oh, I did that too far up. I should not have done the top number because this formula is different now. I don't want to copy that formula all the way up to this one. So just watch out for circular references. You sort of have to figure out how to not reference something that's referencing itself or something that it depends on. We've got to do a lot of those working on formulas like this. So now you can scroll down, or scroll back up, and see that the total interest paid is only $91,000. That's far less than what it originally was. That's still a lot of money, but it's far less than the however many other thousand it was. So what I can do is just forget it. It's a lot more money. You save the money. Your total cost of finance in this situation is actually going to be this plus, and we need to sum all these 1100s up. You're going to scroll down, and it's not there yet, but I can just sum a number that's not even there. And then what I can do, because I can just quickly go down, click auto sum there. Auto sums all that. So we paid 121 extra thousand that we didn't necessarily need to because they weren't demanding it of us, but that did lower our total amount paid. So, well, okay, because the one's a negative and one's a positive, we just need to go down. We're going to just alter this one here. So, change that to minus, and so we spent total $227,000. That's far lower than, actually what I could do is just put a 0 there. Because these all reference back to this, I can quickly just change that. Well, maybe I have an extra $15,000 a month and get that paid off real quick. But we're going to go 0. So going from $348,000 total cost finance to $227,000. Going back and forth real quick. That is over $100,000 saved doing it this way. Putting every last penny you have into your mortgage payment or all of your debt. You're just assuming that you only have one debt account. That is the power of paying down your loan. Now, that's the smartest way to do it and the cheapest way to do it. If you can stomach it, if you have the self-control to every month put that money away toward this, then you can do that. Hopefully, over time, you'll be making more income each year. You'll get a slight raise or a promotion and be making more money. And then you can take that extra money and go have fun. Go out to eat, go to the movies, do whatever you want to with that extra money, and keep paying this $1,100 or even add to it. You don't want to necessarily drop. So let's say after 2 years, you go down to $500 a month. Then that's going to push this out quite a bit. That's going to change it from the 9 years that we're talking out to 14 years. So you want to continue that as long as possible, forever, until the loan's paid off, if you can. It's very difficult to do that. But again, this is the safest way to get your loan paid down faster. The problem with velocity banking is that you're taking another loan out to pay down this money faster, as they want to say, as people want to. When they're promoting velocity banking, they're going to tell you you're paying it down faster, and that's an outright lie. You will pay it off, assuming nothing changes throughout the year, you will pay it off approximately the same time, maybe 1 month or 2 months later than you would doing this. Never faster. If you use every last extra penny you have from the get-go, from when you originate the loan, you will pay it off technically faster doing it this way with your own money, making that choice every single month, than doing velocity banking. And you won't have the added interest of this line of credit that you're taking out. So, I'm going to look at the velocity banking one here. Let's say these are all the same numbers as we just went over here. All the same assumptions, as you can see. Okay, so there was one thing I forgot on this total spent on interest. This interest is actually over inflated. That's actually more than what you would be paying in interest, because what I did not remember to tell you was to change the reference to the total remainder, what the current principal amount is on the future payments. On the first one, that is correct. You do want to reference this one here. However, on the second one, that's not what the current principal is. So if we go up here, we have the present value. Where is it? Right there. We don't want that referenced here. We actually want that on what the actual remaining principal is. So we just change that one to there, and then we click and drag that one down. However, I made that was still a locked reference, and we don't want that to be a locked reference anymore. So there we go. Ta-da, that is more appropriate. So if we go down here, this should be only paying interest on what's currently still owed on the loan. So you only owe $90,000 here. That'll keep going down through all your payments. So that reduced your total spent on interest a lot, as well as your total cost to finance. Sorry, I forgot that. There's so many formulas here. But yes, you will only be paying interest on the remaining balance, not what the total loan amount was at the beginning. So now we will go back over to the velocity banking right here. So again, like I was saying, these are all the same numbers as what we have over here. There are a few more columns. We still have the additional paid toward equity, but we're not doing that here. We're not doing that $1,100 anymore. We're using a line of credit. So velocity banking is the idea of taking another loan out Again, you're going to have to go figure out what you could get a line of credit for. You might be able to get up to $25,000 or more, depending on your situation. We're just going to keep it low at a $10,000 line of credit. So what we're assuming that we're doing here is we're going to take a $10,000 loan out. That money comes right into our bank account, and then we're immediately going to pay that to our mortgage principal. So as you can see, your total accrued equity over here, the second you take that loan out, goes right over here. We're just adding any payment we make directly over here. That's going to obviously reduce the principal balance very quickly in the first month. So in the first month, we're down to 124. Over here, we're still at 133. That's where people lure you in by making you think that you're going to be paying your loan down faster. These people, these velocity banking gurus on YouTube are, oh, you'll pay it down so much faster. And yeah, if you didn't do this over here and you pay all that additional money up front out of your own pocket, you would pay it off a lot faster. But essentially what you're doing by taking the velocity banking out is, or taking the line of credit out, is you take that $10,000 out, but now you have $10,000 extra loan you have to pay off. Well, where are you going to pay that off? The thing they kind of skim over real quick is with the velocity banking, you're using the only extra money you have to pay that money off with, to pay that loan off with, is this $1,100. Dude, that's the only money. So with the line of credit balance, you can see this formula. We take this $10,000 amount. We take your income right here. We're adding the expenses to it because that's a negative number. So we're adding. So that's essentially giving us the $1,100. So we're taking that $1,100 away from that line of credit mortgage. That's how we get $8,900. And it gets more convoluted down here because then we have to calculate the interest that they're charging us for that line of credit balance. So line of credit is going to charge you interest on the average daily balance for that month. To make it easier, this is what the other lady does. To make it easier, we're just going to calculate it on that $10,000. So we're going to take $10,000 for the monthly line of credit. That comes to a credit, an interest charge of $116. So what that's doing, what this interest charge is doing, is taking money away from that $1,100 that we have to pay down our loan. So instead of having $1,100, you're going to have less than $1,000. You're going to have $900 and change. So essentially what you're doing is you're still making that extra payment of $1,100. However, a portion of that is going to pay this off. So what we do here is, and we're getting really convoluted with all the if statements here. So I'm not going to go into depth as to how this was created. I will see about putting all this information on a downloadable Google Sheet drive folder, that file that people can download for free and just be able to look at all these numbers more in depth themselves. But essentially what you're doing is you're taking money away from this $1,100 that you have to pay down your loan and giving it to the bank again. So you're paying interest over here, you're paying interest over here. There is literally no way to take the same amount of income and expenses and pay something off faster by increasing your interest payments. It's physically impossible. I mean, it's as plain as day. You can't make it any more simple than that. And again, the idea is once this line of credit balance is paid off, you can immediately go back up to $10,000 and put that back into your equity coming off of your principal. But just because it went into your equity doesn't mean that this is zero. You still have a balance of, again, now negative $9,000. So yeah, your equity went up, but your equity went down because you have this loan to pay off. So there's literally no way to pay it off faster than just doing this. So again, we scroll down, we see that again, once I had made that change of only paying interest on the total remaining balance as opposed to the initial balance, the payoff is 7 years and 1 month. So I apologize for that again. 7 years and 1 month, you're done with this loan. Velocity Banking, I scroll down, 7 years and 3 months. Could not be faster than the other option because you're paying money toward interest, and more interest over here. And it cannot be cheaper because you're paying the same amount of interest that you were over here, except you're also paying this interest as well. So again, I just sum all these numbers at the bottom of these columns, and total spent on interest, $44,047. Total spent on interest over here, $39,000. Why would you pay the bank more money? Literally makes no sense. If you take this option, or if you're stuck in this option right now, and you have a medical emergency, you're up the creek because you have no extra cash flow to use. Now, granted, you don't have to be putting that on this line of credit balance and paying it off each month. You don't have to. You could be stuck with that $10,000 balance and just letting it accrue, because if you don't pay off this interest, it's just going to keep adding to it. But if you're over here and you have a medical emergency a few years in, well, then you can stop paying this for a few months or a few years, depending on what happens. Or if you have some other emergency where you need money, let's say your car gets damaged and you have to go spend some of that extra cash flow on that car to get it up and running so you can keep your job. You're in far less risk doing this than you are doing this, because if you don't pay this interest off, that's going to grow pretty quickly, just like this one is. They're charging you almost twice the interest for this. And again, that's going to depend on your situation. I can't say that, but the interest rate on a line of credit is going to be substantially higher than a mortgage payment because it's more risky for the bank. I sincerely hope this has opened somebody's eyes, that walking through how to use Excel to crunch these numbers yourselves has helped you and educated you in some way. And I sincerely hope you never do this option. This doesn't make any sense. You never take out more loans to pay off the same debt. Doesn't make any sense. You do need to work toward having the self-control to making these payments each month, maybe even increasing them over time if you get a raise or so on, or a bonus, whatever, so that you can get out of debt. Because you really need to be putting this in an account toward your stocks, toward your retirement, your investments, not paying down loans. Obviously, we need to get a house. It's better to buy a house and pay interest than just be paying rent every month. But yeah, again, I sincerely hope that this has helped. Please like and subscribe if you found this helpful. Share it with your friends. Give me a comment down below if I missed something that I didn't catch. Please bring that to my attention. And yeah, thanks for watching. Have a good one.